Okay, Alex. So we're towards the end of 2015. What do you think's been, if you had to pick one defining moment of this year for Stockton or just generally, what would it be for you?
I think it's very difficult, really. There's probably two things, if I can have two. One would be, the tremendous number of lost jobs we've had over the last few months. There's thousands of steel workers and contractors and construction workers have lost their jobs, and that's been really bad for our local area and for our people. But on the positive side, I think for Stockton, the opening of the town centre, the new look town centre with everything that entails, the development of the festival programme and things there, and this influx of new shops has been very important for our area.
You mentioned job losses there. How big of an impact do you think that's had on Stockton?
Well, I think it's had a tremendous impact. I mean, we know that there were several hundred of the steel workers who worked at Redcar were actually living in Stockton. And we also know that many of the construction workers who lost their jobs when they stopped work on the Air Products site, they also live in the town. So those are people who are making good wages, and that's money that's lost to the local economy. So it means that people aren't spending as much money in the shops as they might have been otherwise. So it's bound to have some sort of knock-on effect. But of course, there have been the positive things happening as well. There are other people who, do have good wages and are pleased to see the new shops and offer that we have in the town centre.
You say that the new high street for Stockton has been a massive improvement. Would you say that Stockton is on the rise again?
I think so, certainly. I mean, I think the local authorities, Stockton Borough Council, have done a tremendous job in having a vision for the future, and that's been borne out now. We've seen new coffee shops open in the town centre. We've seen new clothing shops. We've also seen the development of the enterprise centre, which is seeing even more, small businesses being developed into the retail businesses of tomorrow. So we can see a situation where, with all those things in the market, which is getting a better look now, and things like the festivals programme is actually bringing more and more people into the town, and I think that's got to be very positive.
You say the festivals programme. Just for you yourself this year, if you had to pick one thing that you've been really proud of what you've achieved this year, what would it be?
Well, I was very pleased that the law that I had fought for to ban smoking in cars with children present, I was absolutely delighted that it became law on the 1st of October, so it's now an offence, and that was a 4-year campaign. And people think, well, that wasn't very much, but for me, it means that 500,000 children no longer have to travel in cars with people smoking, and I think their lives will be a lot more comfortable for them and a lot healthier as well. So I consider that to be one of my most proud moments and most proud achievements.
Okay, Alex. As well, looking at the complete ban on smoking in NHS premises in Stockton, how big of an impact do you think that'll have?
Well, I think it's going to make life rather difficult for some people who have, who are smokers and who are addicted to the nicotine. But I think it's important that, the authorities put very specific support in place for people. I know that, the nicotine patches and all manner of other things don't fulfill directly the same feeling. It takes away the actual, action of smoking. But I think it's important that all those things are put in place to ensure that patients are properly supported and don't have to, leave the grounds in order to have a cigarette.
Looking at the national news today, the 1,000 refugees that David Cameron promised have now arrived in the UK. Do you think that there's been enough refugees in the UK, or do you think that there should be more taken in?
Yeah. The refugees that have come so far have come directly from the refugee camps in Syria, as I understand, or in the neighbouring countries in the Middle East. And I'm pleased that we've been able to do a small something towards that crisis. I know the British people generally have been saying that we need to be able to do more. My concern is that the British government aren't doing anything for the refugees who are already in Europe, and that includes children. And I wrote to the Prime Minister a few weeks ago saying to him that I felt we should do something about children who are on their own, unaccompanied children. They have no one else, and yet there are thousands of them in Europe in refugee camps, and nobody's doing anything really to find them a new home. And I felt that we should be doing more for the children, even if we couldn't do it for the adults.
What kind of response to that issue have you had from your constituents in Stockton? Because, of course, Teesside has quite a high, relatively speaking to the rest of England, asylum seeker and refugee population.
Well, I think that's a matter for the government, because the government place contracts with various organisations around the country, and that has led to a higher proportion of refugees coming to Teesside than in perhaps some other areas. I mean, I would like to see, the contracts let in other parts of the country as well, so that, local services don't come under the additional strain that they do when refugees come to the area. I think the biggest problem is that, we're probably able to cope with more refugees, but we need to make sure that the government provides the resources, because it's not just a case of finding a home for somebody and make sure they can eat. They've got education needs, health needs, and work needs as well, and they need real support, and unfortunately I don't think that's forthcoming from the government.
Now, just on that topic of Syria, you, I believe, voted against the government with those planned airstrikes in Syria.
I did.
Just walk us through kind of why you chose to vote against the government in line with... I mean, I know it was in line with the Labour Party, but there were a lot of rebels within the Labour Party. Why did you decide to vote against airstrikes in Syria?
It was very straightforward for me. I'm not a person who is a pacifist. I have voted, in fact I voted last year for airstrikes in the Middle East, and that's one of the most difficult decisions that any Member of Parliament has to make, because you're sending British people into battle and effectively killing people, and that's always a very difficult thing to get your head round. As far as this vote was concerned, I wasn't satisfied that there was a plan for after the bombing took place. My real concern is that the Assad regime, they've been killing their own people for generations, and my great concern was that that organisation or that government, those government forces, would just fill that void, and the people who have been fighting for democracy and fighting for freedom in that country would lose out all the more. So I was hoping that we would see a plan that would see maybe the United Nations in there on the ground actually providing stability, not just stability for the people that are there now, but stability for the people to return home from the refugee camps, to return to their homes and rebuild their nation. I don't think that plan exists, and that's why I voted against.
This will probably be my final question. Looking ahead to 2016, what are your hopes for Stockton?
Principally, my hopes are that we will see an upturn in the jobs market. I mean, today the unemployment figures were published, and there are more people unemployed here today than there were a month ago. So we've seen an increase in that, and there are 5,000 more people in the northeast who are unemployed than there were 3 months ago. So my great hope is that we will actually see an upturn, a proper upturn in the economy and the creation of jobs, so that we can get people back to work and they can support their families.
Just to slightly counter that is how out of step with the national picture on jobs. So why do you think it seems to be the North East in particular that is having increasing unemployment? Why do you think the North East seems to be out of kilter with the rest of the UK?
Well, for me, it's quite simple. I mean, it's a matter of government action or inaction. We don't get the support that we need in the North East. If you live in the South East today, there are thousands of jobs available on any one day for people to apply for, and they're encouraging development. They've encouraged investment in the South East. We simply don't get that level of investment in the North. We don't have the infrastructure projects, building new roads and railways and bridges and things like that to the extent we have in the South East. My understanding is that the cost of Crossrail in London runs into billions of pounds. I just think, well, if we could only just have a fraction of that money in the northeast to invest in our railways and our bus services and our roads, we could actually create lots of jobs and make life a lot better for a lot of people.
Okay, Alex, thank you very much for the interview. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, I suppose I don't know how you're going to package all this, but I just hope that I'd wish my constituents a very Merry Christmas and a very happy New Year, but a New Year which we will see improvements for people in our community.